Okay, let's build this project. So I'm not going to go through the detail of each of them because we could spend 20, 30 minutes just digging into each pattern and why we selected. Rather, I'd like to show you how we can quickly build this picture at a useful level of abstraction with these patterns and what we might need to do to make a project-specific project pattern language. So I'm going to add the foundational patterns that are kind of a given for many of these research projects. In this case, we know that we should be asking an actionable research question, and we've already sort of formed that. For this project, it's about the experiences that customers have before, during, and after booking their rail journey. Now, in accordance with that, there's a lot of ways we can take it, so what we might like to do is understand the shape of the immediate project roadmap, the immediate product roadmap, and figure out how we might be able to mold our questions to be looking at the upcoming opportunities in the product development pipeline. Additionally, because we haven't done this type of project before, maybe we want to get a sense of what we can expect from stakeholders in terms of their participation, and also learn about what they might expect from this project, because we know that we're not the only ones using it. Let me also very quickly then pick a few other standards. We know we're going to need some kind of study plan. We're going to have to figure out which participants we want to be in the project and how we'll screen them and select them. And of course, we think that user interviews are going to be a big piece of this, so it will come with developing a user interview protocol. Now, additionally, I don't know that there's many other pieces we'll use in the approach here. There's potential that we might want to have a stakeholder assumptions workshop, but I think we'll say that that's covered in a set of different stakeholder interviews. If we felt like a number of the team already had a really strong picture of what this experience might be, what this journey might be, then it could be a really good idea to build in a stakeholder assumptions workshop into our project plan. Now, let's talk about execution. Of course, we wanted to have some interviews, and we're going to need to be able to recruit and coordinate those participants. We will need to have the method by which we capture the data and a system for storing that data. Once we do, I think because we're doing a journey map, it may actually make sense to run something that's a bit more longitudinal. Maybe we want to have some user interviews, yes, of course, but also to find a way to learn from people and actually get a picture of what that experience is over time in a little bit more of a real-time manner. So we'll add right now this experience sample diary study as well. And now just roughly thinking out loud, we haven't really thought through specifically how many different customer segments we're going to deal with here. But if we assume that there are 2 or 3 major segments that we might want to deal with, and we want to get a bit of a cross-section, maybe we'll say that we interview, just to get this first picture, something like 6, 7, 8 people across each of those segments. So we'll plan right now for 18 to 20 user interviews just to get a size for what this could look like. We don't know yet how we want to do the experience sampling or the diary study, but maybe it's with just a smaller subset. Maybe it actually comes that we do the experience sample and the diary study first. We give people some kind of homework, and then from there, we do follow-up interviews so that first we've collected data over time from these people's experience, and then we're going to interview them to get the data that we need. Now we can look through and see if there's anything else that we want to do here. It's COVID-19 right now, so maybe we're not going to do a field interview. So let's talk about what happens afterwards. Of course, another foundational pattern that we might need for this study is an interview debrief. And we'll want to do that after every session we collect the data, be that getting data back from the experience sample, as well as actually talking with people in a live interview. So who knows what that is going to look like, but it gives us enough of a size that we can plan and know we might have 30 or 35 different debrief sessions, depending on how we collect our data. Now, from there, what are we going to do with that data? We have to think about what it means to manage the data well. And this is an interesting pattern. I actually think it may be one that we shift and create an approach pattern for the project, and we call it data management protocol, because that's what it's really about. Having well-managed data means understanding how you're going to treat it and organize it up front. So maybe it's more of the approach, but for now we'll leave it because that's where it is. Other pieces, I think because we're going to be working with a team, and let's say that we're going to be working on site, we might want to have a data wall where we're continually manipulating this data in a physical way and making sense of it. Because we'll have the data wall, we won't add an affinity map, but maybe we also just want to plan some sessions and some times for a little bit more of unstructured exploratory qualitative analysis. So what this means is that we're going to be, so far, stop, pause. All right, we'll cut it later. Resuming to step 5, synthesize. I know what these, okay, gee whiz. So for step 5, synthesize. We know at some point we're going to want to develop a report about this, but maybe more importantly than that, those stakeholders that we interviewed up front, we're going to want to bring them back around if they haven't been a part of the process this whole time, which can often happen in in-house research. We need to find a way to hook them back in and have them experience the data as we have. Hopefully, we've actually been bringing them along, and maybe there's a pattern for this project that we want to add. That's a custom project pattern that is stakeholder interview participation. And so we know that whenever we run an interview, whoever our stakeholders were, we're going to have them be in these interviews up front. And this is an example of something where it's not a universal pattern yet. A number of design practices and research practices do enforce stakeholder interview participation, but because it's not part of the general language and we feel like it's important for this project, we can build a project-specific pattern. Okay, back to how we're going to synthesize and make sense of this. So we'll have a sense-making workshop, and of course we want to be developing conceptual models and frameworks of the journey, and because we're going to build an experience map, having that backbone journey skeleton is also going to be very important, and then it's through the larger process of synthesis that we will actually combine the different conceptual frames that we've learned, as well as the different backbones of people's journeys into this final report of what the experience looks like. And because these are going to be actual customers on a live service, another thing that we can do is understand how to incorporate product analytics. The journey becomes much more actionable when we can root it in data, and we can start to understand for the journey that we describe what is the actual performance of these different pieces. So as a part of our synthesis, we'll also roll in product analytics. Now it's getting kind of complicated here, but it's not actually too hard to hold it in our mind what we're going to be doing with this data and what we'd like to have happen. I think that's enough for describing the synthesis. So let's think about what kind of impact this project needs to have. Now remember, we want to be able to frame very specific testable outcomes. We want to find opportunities, we want to provoke people to think about both what is wrong, what's going right, and how we can amplify one and how we can mitigate the other. So what that means is, of course, we'll need to find a way of effectively reporting this. And this is a bit of a catch-all pattern, but it pushes us to recognize that for this specific project, there are going to be specific ways of reporting here. And we will need to, as we get a more clarified view of the project, really detail in this pattern how we're going to effectively report the project. We're going to want people to find it, so of course it's something that we'll add to a public project index. And let's see what else is going to happen here. Maybe for this one, it's not a design sprint that we want, but we do want to figure out a way to articulate a potential product and design strategy. So if we're thinking about writing a report and writing this journey, one thing that we could do ahead of time is actually develop strategic prompts along with our design and product team around how we're going to use this information. So rather than just a journey, just an experience map, we're also delivering recommendations around what should happen and where we could investigate to build new things. There's one final pattern that I quite like that I think is important to include here, and that one is user needs inception. One thing that we know from doing this kind of project quite a bit is that it's not just having the journey. Having something that's a well-synthesized, well-documented piece of research doesn't mean that that research is going to sell itself. So we actually need to think of smart ways beyond that initial report out, how we can, over time, effectively incept these ideas into people. And that could be any number of venues. I gotta tighten this up. That's enough. Okay. But what you can see here is that suddenly we have a picture of how this research project might unfold over time at a level of fidelity that our team can work with. We can start to pull apart and ask, how are we going to do these specific activities? Is this the right sequence in which we need to manage them? What does it actually look like if it happens like this? And are we really set up so that we're gathering the right type of data, we're making the right type of artifacts, and we're doing the right type of thing to have this product and design strategy? And are we building this project in a way that's going to respect the human tensions of the people who are participating as research participants and the people who are running and driving it as researchers, as well as the people who are going to consume its outcomes? So there it is. That is one example of how we can build an admittedly lightweight project pattern language for this type of project.